Everybody look at this problem on the overhead. If I asked you to solve this quadratic equation, if I asked you to solve it, a lot of you guys would try to factor it. It's not factorable. I'm going to tell you that right now. There's nothing you can use to factor it. So if I asked you to do what we did yesterday, how do you complete the square? See if you remember. How do you complete the square? What's the first thing you do to complete the square?
You distribute.
Add 2.
Get rid of the 2 so that's not anything.
Get rid of this first. You want an A value of 1. So first divide everything by 2. So you get x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, now I know for sure this is not factorable, right? I don't know what two numbers that multiply to give you -1 that add to be -4. But there might be a solution, there may not be. How are we gonna figure this out? We're gonna try to complete the square. What do you do first to complete the square? You guys were saying add 2 to both sides. Now we're gonna add 1 to both sides. So you knew what you were doing. Okay, then what do you do?
Cut 4 in half and square it.
Cut -4 in half and square it. You get 4. You are right. Now what? How does this trinomial, and this is factorable,
You factor that.
x to be x what?
Minus 2.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And then what? Whoops, this is 6. Sorry. 5 and 1 is 6. Okay, then what?
Squared.
Wait, what?
Where'd you get that 5 from?
Yeah.
You added 4 to each side, not 5.
Oh, added 4. You guys. Added 4. It's 1 plus 4. I knew it was 5. There.
You the one who convinced yourself it wasn't. We didn't say anything. You did it.
Okay, x minus 2 squared equals 5. We're taking the square root of both sides, and then what?
You write x minus 2 equals 5 squared.
Plus or minus the square root of 5, then what?
Add 2.
Add 2. Okay, so there are 2 answers, right? The 2 answers are 2 plus, whoops, turn the calculator on, 2 plus the square root of 5, which is about 4.24. Sorry, it's hard to read. And 2 minus the square root of 5, which is about -0.23. So these 2 are estimated answers, but the plus root 5, 2 minus root 5, these are exact. You have 2 exact, 2 estimated. Why do we need the estimated answers? Why do we need the estimated answers? Because when I ask you to graph this function, I know because the 2 answers came out to be 4.23 and -0.23. See these 2? These 2 are telling me that my graph is going to cross the x-axis right about here, which is about 4.23, and right over here. So it's going to be coming down and doing something and going up. So in other words, my graphs don't always cross at numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, -1. They're going to cross at weird places like that is 2 plus the square root of 5 and that's 2 minus the square root of 5. Okay? Now, what if I asked you, look at this one right here. If I asked you to solve this one, 3x to the 5th plus 5x plus 1 equals 0. If I asked you to solve this one, first you would probably try to factor it. Okay? And you're going to see that, okay, 3x times x is 3x squared, but 1 times 1 is 1. But if I FOIL this, 3x plus 1x is 4x. I can't, this is not factorable. It's a prime. But are there 2 solutions? Yeah. Now, if I ask you to complete the square, what would you do? You have 3x squared plus 5x plus 1 equals 0. If I asked you to complete the square, what would you do? You better hope I don't ask you to complete the square on this one, because this is going to be horrible to do. if you take half of 5/3, I could do it. I could take half of that. Half of that would be, what's 5/3? Multiply that by half, you get 5/6. And then you square that, you get 25/36. You'd have to bring this over, which is -1/3. You'd have to subtract 25/36. See how messy it's getting? Because of the fact that this is an odd number, it's a fraction, it's just a mess. So we have another way to find the solutions to these, because there is an answer. The other way is if you were to take this formula using A, B, and C as your numbers instead of the numbers that I gave you and completed the square, you're going to come up with this formula, which is the quadratic formula. If you take the opposite of the B value and add and subtract the B value squared minus 4AC, take the square root of all that, all over 2A, those are two more ways to find the solutions. There's possible two more solutions, I should say. So, if the quadratic formula is easy for you, you could actually use the quadratic formula on every problem, even if it's factorable. Okay, I just think the quadratic formula can be very messy. I like to look at my problem and first see if I can factor it. And if I can't, then I look at my middle term. If my middle term's even, I'll complete the square. And if it's not, I then will use the quadratic formula. So let's practice this quadratic formula that you should have all used at some point in time. So, everybody ready? Let's practice the quadratic formula. Starting with example A, we're finding the zeros or finding the solutions. So, if you were to plug 0 in for y, that's, remember f of x is y. What you're looking for is where this graph hits the x-axis. These are the x-intercepts, right? So, maybe it's factorable, but I just don't feel like factoring it. I don't feel like guessing and checking. And I could complete the square, I could divide everything by 2. This would be a good one to complete the square, because if you divide by 2, the only thing is that's going to be a fraction. So we want to try out this quadratic formula. It says the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so now I need to know what a is, what b is, and what c is. What is b?
Didn't we run this?
Yep, you did. This is review. What is the b value? This is b right here. It's -16. So what's the opposite of -16?
16.
Plus or minus. Now, be careful here. It's -16 squared minus 4 times 2. A is 2 and C is 27. Be careful right here. Some of you guys, your calculator is your crutch. Okay, you use this too much. Now watch, if you use it incorrectly, it's not going to help you. If you do -16 squared, and if you do -16 squared, what did I do differently?
You put them in parentheses, showing that the negative is with the 16.
Yes. Be careful, because a lot of you guys don't do that, and you're going to write -256. It's 256. Okay, did everybody understand that? You are squaring a -16, so be careful. So this is what you have, 16 plus or minus 256 minus, I need, what's 8 times 27? Is 216, all over 4. Okay, now I need you to do 256 minus 216, which is 40. All over 4. Now, do you remember a couple days ago, we simplified that square root of 40. What is the square root of 40?
2 root 10.
40, if you made a little tree, is 4 times 10, and 4 is 2 times 2. So this is 16 plus or minus 2 root 10 over 4. Now, how are you gonna simplify that? Because that can be simplified.
4, is that 16?
What can you cancel? What number goes into 2, 16, and 4? A 2. So you can take a 2 out of all three of these. Your answer would be 8 plus or minus 1 root 10 over 2. So your answer is 8 plus or minus root 10 over 2. Now, some of you guys want to break it up. You can. If you broke up this, you would get 16 over 4 plus or minus 2 root 10 over 4, which if you simplify this, you'd get 4 plus or minus root 10 over 2. That's also another nice answer. I'll take either one. Okay, try the next one. I need you to do the quadratic formula for this. So we have x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So if the b value is 3, it's negative 3 plus or minus. 3 squared is 9 minus 4 times 2 all over 2 times 4, which is 8. Anyone have the answer yet? Anyone? Waiting. Anyone? Go ahead.
I got the same answer.
Well, what's the answer?
Negative 3 plus or minus square root of negative 23 over
So is that where it crosses the x-axis?
You can't take the square root of a negative
Oh, you can't take the square root of a negative answer, so what do you think the answer is?
one.
There's no solution. There is no solution. So what's gonna happen, since we're finding the zeros, something like this happens, where the graph is not, we're looking for where the graph crosses the x-axis. So when you see a negative underneath the square root, this negative 23 is called the discriminant. That means our graph does not cross the x-axis. So there are no zeros for this. No solution. When that happens, you write no solution. Okay, now I want you to look at this next one. What's wrong with it? Something's wrong.
The B is in the wrong spot.
What? Say it again?
The B is in the wrong spot.
Yeah, everything's kind of mixed up. So it's y is equal to 3x squared minus x minus 2. Fix it. So when you do your negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, you get the right a, the b, and the c value. So it's going to be, instead of, some people would write negative 2 as your b value, it's actually negative 1. So it's 1 plus the opposite of negative 1 is 1, plus or minus negative 1 squared is 1, minus 4 times 3 times negative 2. Okay, and then 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, help me out. What do I do next? What do I do? I have 1, and then a negative 4 times 3 times negative 2. It's 1 plus 24. What's 1 plus 24? 25. So you have 1 plus or minus the square root of 25. I know that. What's the square root of 25? So it's 1 plus or minus 5 over 6. Please don't leave your answer like that. I need you to do the 2. What are the 2 answers? What is 1? Take one at a time. What's 1 plus 5? 1 plus 5 is 6. What's 6 over 6? 1. That's one answer. And what's 1 minus 5? Negative 4. Negative 4 over 6 is negative 2/3. So this is telling me that this problem was factorable based on those 2 answers. Could have factored it. Okay, now let's look back at this problem right here. See this right here? This was an indication, because we came up with a negative number, this was an indication that there are no solutions. Well, what would have happened if this was a 0? If we had square root of 0, what would happen? You'd end up with, what's plus or minus 0? Well, nothing. You'd end up with just negative 3/8. So when this number under here comes out to be 0, there's going to be only one answer. In like this case, when it came out to be a positive number like 25, there were 2 answers. Even if it were positive like this, 40, there were still 2 answers. So that's what we are talking about in this section. See this part right here, b squared minus 4ac? That's the part that you take the square root of. This part right here of the formula. If this number is greater than 0, what's another name of greater than 0? How do you say greater than 0 another way? How about positive? Any number that's bigger than 0 is a positive number. So if your discriminant comes out to be a positive number, there are going to be 2 x-intercepts. Here's 2 examples. If your discriminant came out to be 0, that would be an example like this where your x-intercept is the vertex. It's going to be touching the x-axis like that. And if your discriminant comes out to be less than 0 means negative. A negative number, like example B, means our graph is going to be floating and it's not going to cross the x-axis. So our job now is to look at 3 examples. I want you to find the discriminant and tell me based on that number if there's going to be 2 solutions or 1 or none. Ready? So A, how do you do the discriminant? Tell me what it is. It's the b value squared minus 4ac. What is b? Is it 12?
It's negative 12.
It's negative 12. Thank you. Thank you very much, because that's a big problem that people don't understand. You have to get it in standard form first. So what is, and then the other thing is people forget to square the negative. So it's negative 12 squared minus 4 times 1 times 36. What's negative 12 squared? And then what's 4 times 36? 144. And what's 144 minus 144? 0. That means that there's 1 solution. So if you were to do this problem, you would see, this is what you'd have. You'd have negative b plus or minus the square root of, this is going to be 0 right here, all over 2 times a. So what you would find out that there's nothing here, so it's the opposite of b, so 12 over 2 times 1, so it'd be 12 over 2, which is 6. So your graph will hit the x-axis at 6. There's only 1 solution. Yes?
What would happen if, like, instead of subtracting 12x, you subtracted x squared plus 36 and ended up with a negative a instead?
That's okay. Everything will be switched and it'll be fine.
Alright.
You can do that. Okay, let's try the next one. B. Did everyone understand his question? He's just saying, what if we moved everything to the other side? That's okay. We can do it that way too. X squared minus 12x plus 40. Let's see what happens here. We get b squared minus 4ac. So it's, again, negative 12 squared minus 4 times 1 times 40. So it's 144 minus 160. What's that answer?
-20 or -16.
Negative 16. What does that mean?
Our solution.
That means there's no solution. And then the last one. b squared minus 4ac. So it's negative 12 squared minus 4 times 1 times 30. So you get 144 minus 120, which is that the one you were doing? Is that when you said 24? Did you say 24?
No, I think I
someone
said
else.
20.
Oh, okay, 24. This is 24, and that would mean there's two solutions. So out of these three, if you were to pick which is which on this picture here, which is A, which is graph A?
The middle one.
The middle one, good. This would be A, the one that's touching the x-axis, because it's 0 is your discriminant. Which one's B?
The low one.
The which one?
The low.
No solution is which one? It's this one. No solution means it's not gonna cross the x-axis. And the two solution one would be this one. These would be your two solutions. And that would be C. So that's,
It crosses the x-axis twice.
that's when the discriminant is a positive number. Okay? All right, now we have one story problem, in the back is your homework. It says, we do this in pre-calc. A rocket is launched from the ground with an initial velocity of 150 feet per second. They give you this equation, negative 16 t squared plus 150 t, where t is the time and h is the height. So when will the rocket reach a height of whatever? So this is the formula. You don't have to come up with this formula. But if we want to know, will the rocket reach a height of 300 feet? And if it will, when will it reach? What time? What time? So if this is talking about the height, and this is the model that talks about when will it reach that height, what do you think you would do for 300 feet? Where would you, we want to plug this in somewhere. Where would it go?
Well, the average.
And for H, yeah. So you're gonna put 300 right here. So 300 is equal to negative 16 t squared plus 150 t. So it's asking you, will it? Will it? So if it will, what are they asking you? It has something to do with the last two, the problems that we did earlier.
That's a solution.
Yeah, if it has a solution. So in other words, they want you to do the discriminant. If that number comes out to be positive, then yeah, it will. So let's do it. What is the B value?
Negative 15.
Huh?
Negative
150. It's
15. Oh, no,
150.
150.
Minus 4, what's the A value?
15.
And what's the C value?
Negative
What is it?
100, or
300.
Yeah.
It's negative 300, you guys. You have to get this over to the other side. Okay, so let's do this. What's 150 squared? 22,500. And now we have a negative, negative, negative. Let's make sure this number has to be smaller than that. If it's negative, then we're in trouble. So we have 4 times 16 times 300. I know it's going to be negative, and I got 19,200. Did anyone else? So, will the rocket reach that? I want to know, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, because that's going to come out positive. 22,500 minus 19,200 gives us 3,300. So the discriminant is telling us that yes, we will get an answer because that's positive. How many answers are we going to get?
What?
How many answers are we going to
Two.
get?
Two.
So in other words, at 2 different times, we're going to reach 300 feet. Why are we going to get 2 answers? There you go. Okay, so now what we want to do is when will it reach? So now we want to do this whole problem. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Do we have to do the whole thing over again? No. What is this 3,300?
The top part.
That's what goes right there. So it's going to be the opposite of b, so negative 150 plus or minus the square root of 3,000. We did have a problem. All over 2 times a. A is 1 is, A is negative 16. Now we have to do this math here. Okay, so we get negative 150 plus the square root of 3,300. And I like to hit enter and then divide that by negative 32.
What did it call? Oh, never mind.
Negative. So I got one answer of 2.89. And now we're gonna do negative 150 minus the square root of 3,300, and take that answer and divide it by negative 32. And I got 6.48 for my other time. So when, I'm gonna draw like a little picture for you. So here's your rocket. We've got time is on the x-axis, in height. So this is what's gonna happen. You've got this picture going right here. It says, when will the rocket reach, so let's say this represents 300 feet right here. When will it reach it? It's gonna reach it right here, so we want this time, which is gonna be 2.89 seconds. And then what happens is the rocket keeps going up. If I wanted to know when will it reach its highest point, then you'd be finding the maximum, the vertex.
Why don't you just subtract the,
And then this, 6.48. So it's reaching 300 feet here at 2.89 seconds, and it's gonna go back up and come back down, and it's gonna reach it at that time. If you wanted to know when will it reach its maximum height, you're looking for the vertex. You'd be doing negative b over 2a, the vertex. The highest point is the vertex, the max, which is what we did last week. So, for homework, what are you gonna do? Flip over.
backside?
And I just, as you can see, I did these last hour during my conference period. These are all the solutions. And this is all the work. This is what you should have. You've got this back page to do for homework. It'll be posted on YouTube for you. So I will leave this up here. And what you can do right now for the remaining time is work on this and refer. You are responsible for knowing the formula and how to get these answers. Okay? Can you guys work? You got about, you don't have much time, but